So over the weekend, I did a rear shock test, testing out a coil versus air. The reason I wanted to do it is just because there's a few downhill teams that have been running air shocks, and I was just curious on why. Is it easier to set up? Just the ones that I've kind of noticed have been Frameworks. Pivot's been doing it for a while, and then I think Commensal just switched to rock shocks this year, and I think most of the people on the muck-off team are on the Vivid Air. So I just wanted to see what the difference was between these. When I rode both of them back to back, the results did surprise me on how I set up my coil versus the air. And I'll kind of get into that later. But on top of talking about suspension, I get my suspension from Gearwork. It's a shop out of New York. The owner, Eric, he does a really good job at helping me purchase my suspension, getting it serviced. With my Boxer Ultimate, when I was ordering it from him, I was just kind of asking him some questions because I was mostly on Fox prior to this, so he recommended that I try this out. He also said if you want to try a rebound tune, just because I was on the lighter side of the weight scale, I guess, he was able to do that for me. He also put in the new RC damper 3.1 because stock Boxers come with the 3. I know the Zebs come with the 3.1, but for some reason the Boxers don't. So he was able to kind of just help me out with that. So if you are looking for suspension or need it serviced or just have questions, reach out to Eric. Really good guy. He's also a racer. He got 3rd place at Tennessee Nationals for Cat 1, so he definitely knows about racing and what he's doing. So definitely check it out if you're in the market for a new suspension, need to get your service, or just have questions.
Alright, so this is the air versus coil test. I've been on the Vivid Air for about a month or two. I've done 2 races on it, and I was on the Vivid Coil for pretty much the whole season, 6 months or so. I have to say, I've had it for a month, so I kind of know how it feels, but I think the first reaction I had when I first got on it was how much more supportive it was with just one volume spacer. It made it pedal better. It was definitely obviously lighter, and I think if I had to explain the difference between the Vivid coil and the air, one's jumping on a mattress, the other one's kind of on a trampoline. But they're both really good. So I'm gonna do 2 runs on each shock. We'll do 1 run on the air shock on here, and then we'll do another run on air shock on a different trail. Run one on the air shock. Off this first drop, I felt like the coil, I had a hard impact. Air shock was good there. Come through this berm. On this uphill, I feel like I G'd out with the coil, but the air shock was a lot more stable. Also, going over these rocks with the coil, I felt like I was out of control. I actually hit my foot on a rock. This section was really choppy. Air shock felt good. Coil felt hard to feel under me what it was doing. And then these step down and jumps, I just felt like the air shock was more composed, and I felt like I got kind of thrown offline with the coil. Alright, so we're going to do run 2 on the air shock on a different trail. Both of these shocks, the air and the coil, I have a 30% sag. But I do like that. One thing I noticed right away with the air shock is just you have that ramp up support. Pretty much have both of these shocks at the same sag, 30, and I have about the same clicks exactly. Didn't do that intentionally, but it is nice that it's pretty easy to set up because you can just feel when you have it right. And this trail's long, kind of bumpy. Alright, dropping in. So yeah, this trail's, once it gets towards the bottom, it's just bumpier, a lot more turns, so it's kind of fatigue. soft it was. So I mentioned before in the video when I was doing my coil testing, and only on the coil I was riding with someone else, so I was naturally faster. So I do think that the data behind my results of the coil being faster were just influenced with riding with someone else. On this trail in particular, I did notice that the air felt just faster, more supportive. The coil, where it was a bit too soft, just kind of, I didn't feel it. I didn't have a good idea of where it was. So I do prefer the air shock overall, just because I like the setup, I like the way it feels. I just feel like it's just higher than travel and more active.
Okay, so getting into the results of doing the coil versus air on the rear shock for my suspension testing. Set a baseline. I always go with the RockShox app to just type in my weight. I'm probably 140. With riding gear for downhill, I just put in 145. I've gone with that number for a while, and I feel like it's always worked pretty good. I usually always just shoot for a 30% sag. So with a coil, I've been running this probably the entire race season almost. I got it maybe 5 months ago. So I've been on the coil. I feel like I got it dialed perfectly to where I really like it. Only issue I had with it is like, and this is just one feature, is just big drops. I felt like I'd have a big hard impact. The Red Bull drop at Windrock, and I'm not going to tune it just for that one feature, but that's the only time where I felt discomfort, where I felt like I landed really heavy on my feet. Everything else felt great. Rebound is at 18, fastest is 20. High speed compression closed, HBO closed. Compression is one click away from being fully closed, and I felt like that was a perfect setup for me. The app did recommend 350 for the spring. That was 25% sag. I went with 325 because I was 30% sag, and everything was good and great. So I tried the air shock. I've been on that for about 2 months, did 2 races on it. Setup, still super easy. Just typed in my rider weight, got me to 30% sag, put in the travel I have on my bike, rode it, raced it. I did pretty much the same rebound, and I still bracketed the clicks, and they were exactly the same as this. So it was a pretty straightforward setup for me, where it's just like still going for 30% sag, kind of know how the bike reacts, how the suspension feels. So then, over the weekend, when I did take off the air shock, put the coil back on, what I noticed is that the front sat up high, the rear sat in too deep. So I felt like I was unbalanced, like I was very squatted. And I thought I had the coil perfectly set up. That was kind of my initial reaction, just because with the air shock on, when you push on it, it felt firm. When you like bounced on it, the front and the rear, with both air in the front and the rear, it felt really balanced. But when I put the coil on, pushing on it, just pushing on the seat, this felt way too soft. When I got on it, it just felt like I was in like a squatted truck almost. Just like the front end was just so high, the rear just sitting in really deep. I have some GoPro footage I'll kind of talk through on what I felt in certain areas. But I just felt like in the really fast kind of rough stuff, I felt like because the coil was just so soft, I just blew through everything. Like on drops, I felt that kind of like feeling in my feet where I bottomed out kind of hard. And then in something like there's this rock area where I tried to pump through, and that hurt my feet. Like not hurt, but I was just like, that was like a really rough impact. And it was just a small little rock that you pump through. And then there was like towards the end of the trail, there's just this really rough section, and I just felt like the whole shock just was not holding up. It didn't feel very plush in that area. And then when I hit the jumps, I just kind of felt like I was out of control, to where like I was like almost like hitting one jump, and these jumps are like a step down and then a really fast kicker, and I just felt like the rear shock did not recover, and I was having to slam on the brakes to not get like bucked off the kicker into the next set of jumps. So I didn't love that, but with like the air shock running at 30% sag, everything felt good. Everything felt great. Like I could do the drop and it felt good. I have one token in there, and like I think that's perfect. Like I like a linear feel, but I do have more support with this. But But yeah, pumping over that same small rock felt good. Doing a little drop felt good. And then that really rough section before the jumps, like the bike just handled that rough section. When I did hit the jumps, I felt like I had enough composure to not get bucked off that kicker. Like I did the step down, was able to go through the next jump totally fine and like push into it and land it fine. But like this, I felt a bit out of control. I did do 2 runs. So I did 4 runs in total that were like somewhat full pulls. So I did 2 runs on the air shock, 2 runs on the coil, and each run was on a different trail. So one run was on the Cat 2 3DH track, the other was on the Enduro trail. Both times that I was on the coil though, I was riding with someone, so my overall times were faster just because I had people behind me. And I don't think that is enough like evidence to say one's faster than the other. I was really kind of just going off of feel and what feels good. I have a race in a week or 2, and I can try it again then. But what I think I would do is, setup wise with the coil shock, is I know people recommend 30%. I would probably try 25% sag on a coil just because it's so soft off the top, and where I'm kind of bottoming out and it feels too soft through like rock gardens and stuff, that's just a sign that I need to go up a spring rate. And that's ultimately what the app said, that 30% sag was a 350. So I would be going up to a 350, even though according to my bike and this little markings on here said I was at 25% sag. So I think this, like, it could be just like the bike kinematics were a bit different, where like the app recommends saying 350 is 30%, but according to my bike, when I'm on that, it's 25. So I think just setting up a stiffer spring, which almost makes sense because you hear about pros running such stiff springs, and it's probably because with coils, it's softer off the top and they want more bottom out support for their really rough tracks. Because I'm like, how are they on such stiff springs with like, and obviously they have custom tunes and they're probably not running the same sag as I am, but I think kind of like if I had to do the ride a coil again, I would probably go up just 1 spring rate from where I am on this right now. But to say the least, to kind of wrap it up, I do like the air shock better. I think it's also just because like I ride at air shock throughout the week on my enduro bike. I know how it feels. It's just easier to almost go from the enduro air shock to the downhill air shock when I'm riding on the weekends, because I only ride the downhill bike on the weekends, and it just was like it just feels more at home. It also made it more playful and more fun. It was still stable, but like if I wanted to put down some pedal power, I could easily do that. If I wanted to just kind of jump and kind of throw it to the side, I just felt like it was just more, it just felt more natural because I think I'm just more used to an air shock. So I prefer the air shock more just because I'm more at home with it. It's easier to set up. I can easily adjust pressure if I want to, just to kind of mess with it. Same with doing tokens. I can really just like adjust tokens right in my trailer. It's pretty easy. But yeah, I think for me, the air shock is the way to go, and I'm gonna kind of just stick with that.